The lights inside the Ireland's Got Talent studio glowed softly as a thin, barefoot boy from Cebu walked onto the stage, holding a worn-out guitar whose would show deep scratches from years of street performances. His shirt was faded, its collar stretched and weakened, and his pants had been patched so many times the fabric held more thread from repair than its original cloth. The audience murmured among themselves, their curiosity rising as they watched the frail child take careful steps to the center of the stage. The host asked his name gently, and the boy answered with a shy voice, "From Cebu pa, I sing sa streets para makatulong." His words hung in the air, touching something deep in the room. The judges leaned closer, sensing an unusual mix of innocence and emotional weight. One judge gave him a soft smile filled with encouragement, while another folded his hands, bracing himself emotionally. When the boy lifted his guitar and positioned himself in front of the microphone, the hall became still. The first chords of Hotel California floated out, thin, slightly shaky, but honest and haunting. His voice entered next, fragile but rich with stories no child should carry. The audience felt an immediate pull, each note cutting through the silence like a plea wrapped in music. One judge covered her mouth as tears formed, unable to process how a child could hold such emotional depth. As he continued, his voice cracked but did not break. Instead, each crack carried meaning, a long night on the streets, a skipped meal, a quiet hope that refused to die. The strict judge blinked rapidly, struggling to maintain composure. He leaned forward slowly, elbows against the table, unable to tear his gaze away from the young singer. The boy reached the chorus, and the softness in his voice hit the entire hall like a wave. One judge whispered, "My God," while another wiped his eyes with the sleeve of his jacket. Even the cameraman moved more slowly, afraid to disturb the raw honesty unfolding on stage. When the final note faded, the entire studio held its breath. No clapping yet, just silence so intense that even the buzzing of the stage lights could be heard. The strict judge rose to his feet, tears streaming, and placed a hand over his chest. The audience finally erupted into applause, growing louder and louder until the hall shook. The boy stepped back in surprise, his small hands trembling as he lowered his guitar. Overwhelmed, he covered his face and began to cry softly. One judge rushed to the stage, knelt beside him, and wrapped her arms around his shaking shoulders. She whispered through tears, "You have touched thousands tonight, sweetheart." The boy sobbed harder, not sure whether this moment was real. For the first time in his life, the world stood and clapped, just for him. Scene 2, almost equals 500 words. Backstage, the Cebu boy sat quietly on a wooden crate, legs dangling as he hugged his guitar like a lifeline. Crew members moved around him, adjusting cables and lights, but their eyes kept returning to him with soft, protective expressions. His mother had sewn the guitar strap herself, using scraps of cloth she stitched together through long nights. He breathed deeply, but the nerves in his chest felt like heavy stones. When his name echoed through the backstage speakers, he flinched slightly, then stood up with resolve far bigger than his small frame. As he walked toward the stage again, the judges watched him with anticipation and tenderness. They remembered his earlier performance, remembered how he poured his entire life into every trembling note. The boy stepped under the lights again, squinting a little as his eyes adjusted. The hall settled into expectant silence. He lifted his guitar and began a softer, stripped-down version of Hotel California. His fingers moved slowly but carefully across the strings, producing sounds that felt like memories, painful, fragile, yet beautiful. His voice came out thinner this time, but more emotional. Every lyric seemed to pull something from deep within him. The audience leaned forward in their seats, afraid to miss even a breath. One judge pressed his hand against his forehead, tears dripping from the corner of his eye. Another judge whispered shakily, "This boy is breaking me." A third judge shook her head, unable to believe what she was witnessing. A child with almost nothing, singing with the emotional weight of someone who had lived a lifetime of struggle. Halfway through the performance, his voice wavered, cracking sharply on a high note. Instead of sounding like a mistake, it felt like a confession. The audience gasped softly. One judge immediately brought his hands to his face, overwhelmed. The boy blinked rapidly but kept singing, pushing through the emotion tightening his throat. His small chest rose and fell quickly as he forced the song forward with all his strength. When he reached the final lines, the entire hall seemed to breathe with him. When the song ended, the room did not explode in applause immediately. Instead, a painful, beautiful stillness hovered for several seconds. The strict judge stood abruptly, his chair sliding backward and crashing onto the floor. His eyes were red, his voice shaking as he said, "You are a miracle, You hear me? A miracle. The audience finally erupted, clapping and shouting his name. The boy bowed deeply, tears falling onto the stage floor. Then something unexpected happened. The strict judge walked toward him, climbed the steps onto the stage and gently lifted the boy's guitar strap. You deserve more than pain, he said softly. And tonight, your life begins again. Scene 3, almost equals 500 words. Finals night filled the Ireland's Got Talent studio with an electric tension that vibrated through the air. Lights flashed, cameras shifted angles, and the audience buzzed with excitement. But when the Cebu boy appeared backstage, barefoot once again and holding his repaired guitar like a gentle treasure, the entire atmosphere softened. Crew members greeted him with warm smiles. They had watched his journey from the very beginning, from the shy child with the broken guitar to the emotional powerhouse who brought grown judges to tears. The boy inhaled deeply, feeling the weight of the moment, yet knowing he had nothing left to lose. When he stepped onto the stage, the hall erupted with applause. But he didn't look around. He simply approached the mic with quiet humility. The judges were already emotional, tissues ready, eyes glistening. The strict judge had his hand over his heart even before the music started, bracing himself. The boy lifted his guitar, gave one gentle strum, and began singing Hotel California for the final time. His voice had grown stronger since the first audition, but the innocence and pain were still deeply rooted within each note he released. Midway through the performance, he reached a part of the song that he had struggled with in rehearsals. But tonight, his voice soared, clear, deep, and trembling with raw soul. The strict judge broke first, covering his face as tears spilled uncontrollably. Another judge stood up, pacing behind her desk, unable to sit still under the emotional weight. The boy's voice grew bigger, echoing through the hall with a kind of purity that demanded to be felt. As the boy approached the final chorus, something shifted in the room. The lights dimmed slightly, making his silhouette glow. The judges leaned in, breathless. When he hit the last emotional high note, the strict judge slammed the golden buzzer with both hands, unable to hold back another second. The sound echoed like thunder, followed by an explosion of gold confetti raining down from above. The boy froze mid-note, staring upward as shimmering flakes fell around him like blessings. The audience screamed, cheering his name as he dropped to his knees from shock and emotion. He pressed his hands to his face, crying into his palms. His guitar slid gently to the stage floor as he sobbed uncontrollably. The judges stood, clapping through their tears. The strict judge rushed onto the stage, knelt beside the boy, and placed a hand on his back. "You deserve the world," he whispered. "And tonight, the world finally saw you."